The untold horror, black male slaves, and the cruelty of white women. The brutal realities of slavery are well documented, but some chapters remain shrouded in silence. One such chapter is the torment endured by black male slaves at the hands of white women. These stories, though uncomfortable, demand to be told, not to place blame in isolation, but to confront historical truths. For many enslaved black men, white women used their social dominance and the shield of patriarchy to inflict pain, humiliation, and exploitation. Their actions often went unnoticed or were swept under the rug, further dehumanizing the victims. This video seeks to bring these stories to light. Privilege and power played immense roles in this history. White women, although seen as subordinate within white patriarchal structures, held immense power over enslaved black men. They used this power not only to enforce labor, but also to commit acts of sexual violence, psychological abuse, and physical cruelty. Enslaved men were placed in an impossible situation. Any resistance risked brutal retaliation from the women themselves or their male counterparts. They had no legal or social recourse to defend themselves, further subjecting them to unimaginable horrors. Historically, several accounts reveal how black male slaves were scapegoated by white women under the pretext of punishment. A minor disagreement or perceived insult could lead to severe physical harm. Whippings, starvation, and emotional degradation were regular tools of control. These acts were not random. They were systemic. Many white women weaponized societal perceptions of white innocence to terrorize black men. They understood that their word alone could determine whether someone lived or died, and they frequently wielded this power. One of the most disturbing aspects of this narrative is the sexual exploitation of black male slaves by white women. Forced into silence, these men endured unspeakable violations. These encounters were more than physical abuse. They stripped the men of autonomy, leaving scars that were both invisible and eternal. For enslaved men, speaking of such violations could bring unthinkable consequences. White women were shielded by societal norms that framed them as incapable of violence, while black men, already demonized, lived in perpetual danger of being falsely accused as aggressors. The abuse extended beyond the physical realm. Enslaved men were routinely humiliated through psychological manipulation. They were often forced into impossible moral dilemmas, exploited emotionally, or degraded in front of others. This intricate cruelty broke not only the body but the spirit. White women's calculated use of humiliation ensured control. By stripping black men of their humanity, they reinforced the twisted hierarchy of slavery, leaving wounds that could linger for generations in families and communities. Why do we rarely hear these stories? Because history often chooses the narratives that make it to the surface. Black men endured not only the horrors of slavery, but also the erasure of their painful truths. Their suffering became a forgotten footnote in the greater context of the era. This imposed silence, both then and now, speaks to the systemic effort to deny these men their agency in history. It is our duty to confront this silence and amplify the voices of the oppressed, ensuring their pain becomes part of our collective memory. The pain of this history still echoes today. The legacies of dehumanization and power imbalance between races and genders persist in modern dynamics and systemic inequalities. Recognizing these stories forces us to reckon with the deeper truths of slavery and its continued influence on society today. As we uncover these stories, we understand that history is neither distant nor finished. It lives in the wounds of the present. Telling the stories of these men is not just honoring their reality, but a step toward healing and accountability. These histories demand us to act, not in fear or shame, but with purpose. Share what you've learned today with others. Dig deeper into the untold histories of oppressed people and use these truths to educate and inspire. Awareness fosters change, and change begins with you. Let these stories ignite your desire for justice and equity. Advocate for accurate historical education in schools, join discussions on racial and social equality, and demand that forgotten voices be restored. Let the silence end with us. Together, we can ensure that these truths shape a more compassionate future.